I think that he is losing to Gunna. I remember when they were coming up at the same time.
Yep.
Basically, it was almost
together. Yeah.
Yeah, it was seeming like they were a duo for a little bit, but then they separated. But I think now in the polls race, he's falling behind very, very quickly.
Oh,
very easily.
By a lot.
Yeah, by a significant margin now.
Good afternoon, beautiful people. This is another episode of Album Mode. We review a new album every single week. We look at the lyrics, the production, the overall aesthetic of the album, how the album fits into the context of that artist's career. For everyone watching on YouTube, make sure you like this video, subscribe to us, and leave us a comment. Let us know how wrong we always are. My name is Adriel Smiley, a.k.a. AdrielSmiley.com, a.k.a. Adriel Smiley Official, a.k.a. The Godfather. We're here with His Royal Highness, a.k.a. The Bunny, a.k.a. No Longer a Munch, no longer the champion, King Grant.
What's happening, people? We're back. It's Album Mode 2025.
Yep.
We're here. We've made it to 2025, which is incredible. Just genuinely.
Shout out to us.
Yeah, shout out to us. Shout out Lotto for that song. Shout out to me.
Yes, shout out to Lotto.
But we're here back again reviewing Lil Baby. Wham!
That was good.
Lil Baby, Atlanta rapper, Lil Baby, Atlanta rapper, one of those artists that came up in the late 2010s with Gunna, where we were like, this is it. We're entering a new stage. This is a new era. Atlanta hip hop basically had hip hop by the scruff of its neck, but now we're like, it's just going to engulf everything. Lil Baby and Gunna, when Drip Too Hard hit the scene, was a moment. And now,
yes.
What is it now? 7 years into the future, which is insane to say out loud.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because this was an era where people were almost not using the phrase mumble rap as much. Like, it still was around, but it kind of died. But these guys, in a sense, were kind of the epitome of mumble rap. Young Thug, people accused him many times of being a mumble rapper. Gunna, Lil Baby were coming from that cloth. But before we go back in terms of how we got to this place with the aura that he has today, I want to mention that he said that he's dropping a second album next month.
Okay.
It's going to be called Dominique. He said this on Lil Yachty's podcast, A Safe Place. And I think this is important because he's calling it, kind of a double album where Wham is fast cars, girls, jewelry, money, which from the album that I heard, that seems pretty correct to me. And while Dominique is more serious and personal.
Okay.
Which we've never heard Lil Baby really do. So I'm interested to see what that's about. And he says, that's part of the new journey I'm on. I hate the word vulnerable, but I'm going to be more open to my fans and my audience. Lil Baby does seem like the type of guy who hates the word vulnerable. That kind of adds up to me. But before we move on, how do you think about the fact that he is dropping another project in a month? Future just did this last year, I guess a couple times. But how do you feel about him dropping new music, so soon?
Well, I'm happy for him. I think that he can. I'm happy he can feed his family more. I don't know.
That's for the fans.
Yeah, that's for the true fans. That's for the fans and the haters.
Yeah,
that's for the fans and the haters. But honestly, I think it's interesting. I do always find it interesting whenever artists release like two bodies of work in the same year, just because especially now in the era of streaming, artists typically want people just focus on one album, a set of songs, and just really stream those and soak those up. So to have a second one, it kind of like divides the attention that the first one gets. So I think it's interesting. I think it's fun. For me, when it comes to Lil Baby, I've been down on Lil Baby since inception, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
Definitely since
I've known you, at least.
Yeah. I mean, I recognize Lil Baby and Gunna's ability to move units. I recognize it, right? But when it came to their artistic ability, I was extremely skeptical. But when I think it was My Turn came out, people were like, this is the next guy. And I was like, next guy to do what? So that's pretty much where I've come from on Lil Baby. So when we're talking about like dropping two albums in the same year, I'm like, it's probably going to sell units, but I'm still quizzical. I have not been moved from my initial analysis of him, where I'm like, I don't really see the artistic. I see the value, but I don't see the accent. I don't see the accentuation. I don't see the artistic story. I don't see it, like, what is it? Like, I don't see it. Like, I see his ability to put words together in succession, and for them to rhyme.
Yes.
And I understand that his beat selection, I would say, is amicable, agreeable, something that you can listen to. But I've not seen the artistic ability that he has been touted for early. But it feels like it's dissipating now.
Before we get into the actual music itself, I want to big him up a little bit.
Okay.
How he got here, okay? And I was actually, like a lot of artists we talk about, I was quote unquote early on Lil Baby. And I don't want to say I was that early, because his first song, My Dog, appeared on a Quality Control compilation album.
Wow.
And this was the era where anything Quality Control we were all listening to.
Yeah.
At least those of us who were there on that part of the internet. So we heard My Dog. It was his first Billboard Hot 100 entry. And it was a standout. I remember texting my friends being like, who's this Lil Baby guy? And soon after that, he was kind of off on his way. He dropped a collab mixtape, Drip Harder, with him and Gunna. Obviously, that kind of broke the both of them together. Then his solo mixtape, Street Gossip, followed right after that. That was where I realized maybe I'm not a Lil Baby fan, because I loved Drip Harder, but Street Gossip didn't really get in the rotation for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first sign, at least personally, that I'm like, maybe I'm not on this train like I thought I was. His first album in 2018 was Harder Than Ever. And I think at that time, he was still seen as coming up. I don't think that people were saying he's the next one. It was more like, okay, he's on the come up. He's doing well. Him and Gunna are the new wave. But I don't know if it was next up yet. And you mentioned people saying he's next. That happened at My Turn. His second studio album in 2020. It peaked at number 1 for 5 weeks on the Billboard 200.
Yeah.
At this time, it's quadruple platinum. Best-selling album of that year in 2020. Now, I'm going to go through a couple more stats. A couple more. This is a long list of stats. But this album is one of the best-selling albums, in rap history, and definitely of the 2020s. And this is kind of the album that his aura stands on. Longest charting rap album of the 2020s. Most weeks at number 1 of any rap album of the 2020s. 19 songs charted on the Hot 100 simultaneously. Those are some Drake stats right there. Most streamed rap album of the 2020s in the US. Only rap album to spend its first 4 years in the top 100 on Billboard. Most gold and platinum songs from any rap album in history, 25, which is a lot of songs to have on an album, but all gold or platinum. The only rap album this decade to sell 2 million copies in a single calendar year. Most streamed Atlanta hip-hop album of all time on Spotify. Fastest trap album to sell 1 million copies. Only rap album in history to spend 100 weeks inside the top 10. 197,000 sold first week. 25th, the longest charting rap album of all time. And still inside the top 100 on Billboard in 2025.
Huge. That's what I said. Like, people were saying Lil Baby was the guy. Next guy. The one. Definitely the person to bring things forward. Like, it was, even at that time when I was refuting it.
Yeah.
Pretty fervently, which was kind of hilarious, because
same.
people were like, "You're a hater," but I'm like, whatever. But I think that now, looking back on those numbers, I was like, yeah, he was, you can't. It was at that point kind of undeniable. I'm like, yo, this guy's about to take over. He was coming up. I would say that was
his breakout.
That was his mainstream breakout. Maybe is probably the best way to describe it. In a sense, yeah. So that it was just like, oh, this is about to be a real thing. The same way like Juice WRLD was, like a real thing. The same thing that Pop Smoke was being. I guess this is 2020, so Pop Smoke was dead.
Yeah.
But it was like in that type of essence where I'm like, this is becoming a moment. This is becoming a guy. This is becoming this and that. Right. People at the time were touting his rapping ability.
This is where it started. You're right about that. This is where it started.
People at that time were touting his rap ability, right? His ability to, I would say that he does create songs that have storylines. That's true. But I would say that they weren't as strong as people or saying that they were. But, we're talking about trap music. So it can kind of get dicey when it comes to songwriting and trap music. But he was the strongest one, right? And I think that's what his next oneness emanated from. It's like he's making trap music, but like it's banging. But like if you really listen to the bars, though, he's really talking about stuff, which was true.
I think what really changed for that project, because this is an era where I was really growing with these artists. Like I was listening to Gunna, Lil Baby, Young Thug a lot in 2017, 2018. So this was like, almost my come up in a sense with these artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I think why My Turn was so successful in my estimation is, one, it was his first project that felt like an actual project. I think before stuff he'd done with Gunna, even Street Gossip Harder Than Ever, those were more a collection of songs. I think My Turn, even though it wasn't the deepest project, still felt like some kind of cohesion and some kind of project. And then I think as well, it being so long and having that. I think even today, like an album that's 20 plus songs and still feels like an album is hard to do. So I think that was a big part of it being like, oh my God, it's an actual album. And I think that was what made everyone so excited about it. So that is kind of what brought him to the aura that he's at today, because his follow-up project, It's Only Me, was not any of that.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned that because, people like some songs from that album. There are people who still love that album. I'm not one of those people.
Shout out to them.
Démar's not one of those people. But we haven't really seen an artist, I guess, have an aura last so long off of one project. And I think the real difference with him is that he had a kind of a feature run that is, I guess, Lil Wayne is probably the closest. Maybe not the volume of Lil Wayne, but in terms of the importance of his features and kind of how dynamic they were. I had a friend bring up to me recently that he had 2 songs with Drake where he was the best part of the songs. And that hasn't always been the case. And Wants and Needs is one of them. Girls Like Girls is the other one.
Pikachu
is, I guess you can count that as well.
Yeah.
So it's like him having these big moments as a feature, I guess, added to the aura. And it kind of made someone who was a singles artist beforehand become an album artist all in one night. And even though we don't look at him like that, I think having that album artist added to your repertoire in people's minds adds an extra bit of aura that is hard to come by.
Yeah.
It's Only Me in 2022. We reviewed that album. I wish we had the podcast when My Turn came out, because I think that would have been a great start for us.
I think if we had the podcast when My Turn came out, I actually think we would be more popular right now. Because we'd be like...
We both would have shot on it.
Because we would have been like, oh, it's terrible. Like, people are talking about this. He's such a great songwriter. I'm like, do you guys listen to other versions of hip-hop? Like, that's what we'd be saying. So I think that that would be one of the albums that we did not like that the public did. And we've had albums like that before.
Yeah. Because I remember I wasn't impressed.
Yeah, me neither.
I listened to it before, and I remember talking to a friend of mine, and he was like, man, all I listen to right now was My Turn on repeat. And I'm like,
My Turn?
The same My Turn that I heard? So I remember that day going to listen to it again, being like, am I sure I'm hearing this? Yeah. And I was not impressed. Also, before I get you to kind of remind us of your score.
It's Only Me.
This pod is in such a time where in the description, you put our clubhouse and green room handles.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's how you know it's a different time. So 2022 feels like a long time ago now, but yeah, that's how long ago that was.
Whoa.
Do you remember the score that you gave it?
I must have given it like I want to say a 2?
Okay. Not as bad. You gave it a 3.5.
Okay. I mean, it was listenable.
Yeah, I gave it a 6.
Wow, look at you.
I'm impressed by that 6. I'm not going to lie. Like, I did not see that 6 coming. Listen, I'm here to help. I
gotta re-listen to that episode. Shout out to everybody who goes back and listens to the old episodes, which I do know there are people that do that.
Yeah.
That is one of those that I don't think I went back. I sometimes I go back and listen to them just to hear, because I talk to other people about music, and they'll reference something we said on the podcast or just in general. And sometimes I'll go back and listen to what we said, and then like if things have changed or anything like that. That is one where I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to leave that one there.
Yeah, absolutely. As we get into production, there's something I wanted to start with that kind of goes over almost all of these beats. Now, there are some that don't fit into this.
Okay.
But I think this is how I felt about the album as a whole. And I have written here, A lot of these beats, I think, were actually leading towards something different. And then it feels like they were Lil Babyified.
Oh.
And I think that's kind of a theme on this project where whether it's the intro of the song or the actual keys and chords of the song is these are heading in a place that's not the traditional Lil Baby. And then at some point in the record, it becomes a Lil Baby song all over again.
Yeah.
And I think we usually give artists some flack for not having a traditional sound or having a sound that's, home to them. I think he's probably the artist who suffers from that the most.
Yeah, I agree. A good example of this is I Promise.
Yep.
Where it has that basically this really, really serene guitar that leads into it. It's like this great loop. And I'm like, what? I genuinely had to oh my God, he's actually going for something here.
Same.
He's going for a little Arlo Parks, a little because I will say that Lil Baby, because of his voice, he has a whiny voice, which is fine. Lil Wayne has a whiny voice as well.
Yeah.
It makes his storytelling good, better.
Yeah.
Because he has, I don't know what it is about
it's like an emotion in his voice.
Yeah. So when that I Promise is playing, it's like that guitar loop, I'm like, oh, he's just gonna sing it. He's just gonna sing the song, which I think is something that could be possible for him.
Yep.
And then the bell comes in and then it drops into a regular trap beat. And I was disappointed.
I have almost the exact same thing written down here. It's like those guitars were so promising.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Here's a moment. I'm like, this is about to be a next step for him.
And I said this to a friend talking about the project. I said he needs a Metro because I think Lil Baby as a rapper, even though he's to a point now overrated in how good of a rapper he is, he can actually almost rap on any type of beat.
True, that's very true.
He's very versatile in terms of what he can rap on. And so it's like, if he had gone the Arlo Parks route, he probably would have floated on that. It's like, but he stays in this pocket and stays here. Two songs that are similar to me and kind of are the epitome of what I don't like from Lil Baby is F You Two Times and Stiff Gang.
Oh, you don't like Stiff?
Stiff Gang? No, the song itself is good.
Okay.
But that beat is like every Lil Baby song you've ever heard before. And we've mentioned this with Future sometimes, of Future is almost making the same song every project. This past year in 2024, he kind of got out of that the most he's ever in his career on all three of his projects. Lil Baby hasn't gotten there yet. And I think he needs that kind of production direction to not do what he usually does, because F You Two Times and Stiff Gang are songs that I think are for the hardcore true Lil Baby fans. But again, I've heard those a million times over.
Yeah, Stiff Gang is another song like I talked about with I Promise, is that violin intro. I'm like,
we're headed somewhere.
Exactly. We're heading somewhere. We're heading somewhere artistic, like I was talking about at the beginning, where I'm like, there's artistic evolution, artistic something, where I'm like, he cares about the art. And not to say that he doesn't care about the art, but in a way that, even somebody like Drake, Kendrick, Tyler, the Creator, they care about the art, just strictly the music, right?
And he's not that.
And I don't feel that from Lil Baby, which is a shame, because I do think he has tools, right? But he's using the same, he's using the tools to build the same furniture every time, right? He's a mass producer, right? Where the other people I mentioned, they're artisans. Right? And I think he has the ability or, the purchase to be an artist, somewhat an artisan, because there's this song that he has with Rod Wave.
Yes.
Where I'm like, okay, by myself, there's actually, again, that's something's happening in that track, The production it's got this, this whine. Whining is the key word to Lil Baby's music.
Yes.
But there's whining synth, and then his actually kind of singing the hook at the beginning that Rod Wave sings after. But that's something he can do. So I'm like, that's what I'm saying. You have the tools, you got to put them to use though, not just mass producing the same things over and over. So I think that's my biggest gripe with him when it comes to production and just him overall is the pocket that and exists in, very comfortable. It's going to sell. Just again, my mass produced shares.
Yeah.
Very comfortable, they're going to sell. Right? But if you want to be, if you want to be like a Hermes, you're going to have to try and, try something new. You're going to have to try something different. You're going to have to make it more premium. Right?
And I think that's a good kind of analogy for Lil Baby, because he said on the record, that's not him. He said it before, I started rapping when I got out of jail. He's not a musician to his core. He's like, I'm tired of making money selling drugs, so let me make money selling music.
Right.
Simple as that. So the entertainer part of him is way larger than the musician or the poet part of him. Now, he's grown as a poet, and that's part of his success. But I think to his core, he's definitely like, I'm an entertainer. I'm here to make money. I'm doing what makes money. And I think this is interesting in thinking about his next project, Dominique, is songs like I Promise or even So Sorry. It's like,
I love So Sorry. That's like, my favorite song by him, I think.
Mine as well. But it's like, those are the more songs that I gravitate towards. And it's like, will Dominique be more of that? And are these songs from Dominique that made it onto this project just to give it more variety? Because it's like, if Dominique is full of So Sorries, we're going to come here with a whole different tune.
We're going to have a different conversation.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I think as well, like personally, I think if it was me, if I was A&R, I would drop Dominique first instead of Wham. That's just, I haven't heard Dominique yet, but from what he's saying it is, that's what I would do. But I do think there's a bit of, you know, how the internet was talking about him towards the end of last year. I feel like people like almost like preying on his downfall already. It's kind of like, okay, let me do what works. I feel there's a bit of that here. So production-wise, I want to give him some like leeway, but I don't love most of the production I hear.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're mentioning So Sorry. I like Stiff Gang. I think that he also is kind of like trapped with his features. Like one of the things I noticed with his features is that, I mean, I want to basically the entire theme of this album, safety, right? Lots of safe, no risks. Very few risks, very, very few risks are happening. And I think it's on like, I'm trying to figure out the name of it, like Stuff with Travis Scott. That song is like, you know, we both brought Travis Scott albums today. Notice when those Travis Scott albums came out. Right? Like that's what it felt like to me listening to Stuff. It was like, this is 2018 Travis Scott, like what he's doing with like the voice in the background and that was sick in 2018.
Listen, Travis didn't give him no new heat. That's what it sounds like. You're right, like, because I feel like Travis could have gave him some real heat, and this could have been something. But it's almost like it's almost as mid as the rest of the project. I have one more production note, and then kind of an overall note in terms of features to kind of go along with what you're saying. Outfit, the muddiness of that song. I think that's kind of the part of Lil Baby that I don't love, that I think his fans love. It's a distortion in some of his records, but the whistle in that song, good. Yeah, I like the whistle. It's 21 Savage helps that song as well. And then Redbone is where I noticed it at first, but it feels like Lil Baby doesn't raise the level of his features. Like it feels like Glorilla kind of dumbed herself down to fit with Lil Baby. And it's like, not saying Glorilla is like Lil Sims out here and like, you know, this super intelligent rapper, but for me to notice Glorilla dumbing herself down, it's like, that's how you know the level is low on here. And I've thought about that because Lil Baby was such a beast with features. In his prime, at the top of his aura, I think about Wants and Needs when that came out. And his verse was just like viral instantly. And he's been that rapper where if he's rapping with certain rappers or on a certain sound, he can raise his level.
Yeah, he elevates.
He can elevate himself. But I've noticed, and this is almost across the board in his career, is when people join him, they kind of go down a level. And I don't know what that's about because he is kind of at a level where they shouldn't do that. But if you look at all the features on here, is like, they're like, I didn't ask a question because I think there is no standout feature on this project. Like usually if you listen to the podcast, I always ask that, what's a standout feature? That's why I didn't ask today. There's almost no standout feature because they all kind of like mute their talent, bring their level down to like meet him. And it's like, I don't know what that's about, but this is the album where I noticed it more than ever.
Yeah, I think a symptom of that is the production style. I think because the production style is it's simplistic in the sense of like it's already existed. Like his production style is very late 2010s, actually I would say early 2020s. We're in the mid 2020s.
Yep.
So it's stuff that we've heard before. So it almost like, I feel like it's the complexity of like certain music now is missing from that. So a song like Redbone with Glorilla, heard that a million times by Future. That production, that like, You know, like I've heard that a million times with Future and Lil Baby. So I think people almost like revert to like what it's supposed to sound like at that period in time instead of trying to
how they rapped 7 years ago.
Yeah. So that's like kind of that's kind of like the problem with production in conjunction with the features is like the production by being from that time period is also sucking people to be like that.
He's the biggest regressor from that time. Like we talked about it with Meg when we did the Glorilla review of how women in hip hop are almost like moving past Meg. Like there's Glorilla, there's Lotto, there's Flo Milli, who are like it's not, there's some pussy rap bars, but it's not all pussy rap. There's like so many different things happening. I feel like that about Lil Baby, where Gunna's production now with Lil Baby's production, miles ahead. Future as well. Even Young Thug's production is miles ahead. Saw Baby as well. 21 Savage has even like dived more into the R&B production. I think it was something like Moneybagg Yo, who wasn't as big back then. His production is much better than Lil Baby's production. And so it's like, he has stayed in his spot, and again, like it worked for him. So it's like
it's still selling.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like we're kind of criticizing someone who is selling, you know, out the gym, but everyone who he came up with, all of them are kind of progressing in terms of the actual musicianship, where he's not. So I think that's something here where it's like he is kind of like the Meg of trap in a sense, where he got big and stayed with what works. It's, you know, it's very much like in sports when a player is good almost right away and then doesn't improve in their career after that. This kind of feels a bit like that.
Oh, he's the Usman Dembele of is that what it is? He's the Usman Dembele of hip hop.
He basically, like, I think there's one part where he improved, which is My Turn, where he became a better lyricist.
Yes,
because literally, and I haven't really seen that with an artist since. Lil Yachty's probably the closest in the modern era, but basically overnight for everyone to go like, I like him, he's cool, to he can rap. Like that doesn't usually happen overnight. You have to kind of earn that over time. He earned that basically all in one day when he dropped My Turn, which doesn't really happen. But I think there's a lot of regression here in a sense.
Yeah, which is really odd because it's been 7 years. Like again, we were talking about Drip Too Hard. That was 2018.
Yeah, we were in school at that time.
Yeah, we were in facts. We were in school. Isn't that crazy?
No, that's how long ago it was. Like
before COVID, pre-COVID.
No. I think about who I was dating during that time, and it takes me back to a place I do not want to go to. Let's go to So Sorry, our favorite song on here.
Yeah.
Verse 1. You know, he was right in terms of we thought it was going a different direction with the production. The lyrics kind of match that as well. And I highlighted this because this is still in a place lyrically where it kind of still fits the mode. You know, it's not money, clothes, and hoes, but the actual language he's using is still understandable, familiar. And I think that this is a place for Lil Baby that, like, for him, this feels like so vulnerable and deep, but it's like in the grand scheme of hip hop, it really is not. And I think there's a part here where, and I don't want to compare him to another rapper, but I think about someone like Conway. And Conway has all these songs where he's talking about his life, and it may not be flattering, but he's literally saying about what his life is. He has songs where he starts off saying, I'm not a good dad, but I'm always on the block.
Right.
You know, and it's like, that's not deep, really, but it's like he's really talking about his real life, what's really happening, and you kind of feel that. So I think Lil Baby, that's where he's kind of stepping into of like, okay, everyone knows that I'm rich, everyone knows that I have jewelry. Let me talk about my actual life, what's happening. Here, this part is about a friend. On verse 1, he says, I thought you was my friend. I thought we was locked in. But that's what I got for always thinking. You really was my twin. I put overtime in. Been talking to God, trying to shake his hand. Got me tatted on your skin. I ain't trying to force it. I'm knowing that all good things come to an end. I got so many questions. Know you got answers. I just don't know how I should ask. That is pretty open to me, of like losing a friendship. You don't know how to approach it. You don't know how to have that conversation. It's like, that's something I feel like everyone goes through. And I feel like, especially a lot of his fan base is men, it's like speaking to men losing male friendships, whether it's over something serious or something trivial, it's like navigating like losing a male friendship and how you go about that. And like he said, tatted on your skin. It's like, this is someone who clearly you were very close with, that you got them tatted. So it's like, that's a part where it's like, you're not less gangster for talking about losing a friend. You're not less cool for talking about losing a friend. You're not less rich for that. But it feels like something that, because he's avoided that for so much of his career, it's like, he's bearing his soul. But it's like talking about losing his friend in terms of the lyrics we cover on this podcast is on the low end of like deep lyrics. But I think this is a space where, again, very male-centric in the terms of the content, and he can do a good job of this because I think this is one of the better songs, but the best songs to both of us. So
yeah.
I think he can do a good job of this.
Yeah, shout out to you for thinking that it was legitimately a friend that he was talking about, because I thought he was talking about some girl. So it's actually it's like,
oh, true.
You actually read it. It's actually interesting if you can kind of read it deeper if you read it flatly. He's like, oh man, he has such emotional intelligence to be talking about a friend like this, like another man. And I'm like, actually, I just think he's talking about a girl. But it's like
true.
But either way, I think that it is his best. I think it's his best song on the album by far. I think that the production and the lyricism actually meshes well on this. I was gonna talk about the same verse, but literally where you stopped was where I was gonna start.
I'm dead.
So I'll just say that like his lyricism on this is really good because we're actually getting a view of his life, and we're getting a view of him where it's like sometimes when people make these songs that's really about their life, or it's really important, or like really lyrical like this, or not lyrical but vulnerable like this, their rapping suffers.
Yeah.
Right? But this doesn't, because he's like, this is right after what you're talking about. It's like what was you doing when I called you and you didn't answer? I seen the new Hermes on your arm. Where you get that from? Like, why was you always half naked on your platforms?
Oh, maybe that's not his friend then.
Yeah. Maybe not. I was like, you told me I
gave him too much credit. You're right. I gave him. Listen, I want Lil Baby to have that credit. I want that for
Me
him.
too. But
you know what? I take it back.
That's why I said I'm like, it's somehow interesting. If you read it flatter, you actually read it. It's more deep. It's more deep.
I wanted that to be for him so bad.
But he's like, you told me you tried, but you ain't go. You think I'm that dumb? You ready to see me moving on? You think I'm that numb? Why take advantage of a nigga who really cared for you? I left 10,000 roses on the stairs for you. So I think that, obviously I'm saying it out loud versus him rapping. He has a southern Atlanta accent. So stuff like from, forms, like platforms, dumb, numb, those actually rhyme coming out of his mouth. So I think that it's cool that he's able to do that and it doesn't suffer lyrically, right? And I think that's one of his strengths. Like, I think he is above average storyteller, because there's definitely times where he'll be rapping about, like, halfway through this verse, he's like, I've been talking to God, trying to shake his hand, got me tatted on your skin, I ain't trying to force it. And then he goes into like, I'm knowing that all good things come to an end. Like, that section doesn't rhyme at all.
Yeah.
Right. So so I want to acknowledge him as above average as a storyteller.
And that's it.
But that's kind of it, because I think that most of the lyrics throughout this album is your typical I'm the best, which is fine. Money, which is fine. Less clothes. It doesn't really rap about clothes that much. Sometimes like cars.
Yeah, cars sometimes, definitely jewelry.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because there is this, I think, different part of hip hop that's very much, this is the content they like. Like, I want to hear you talk about jewelry. I want to hear you talk about cars. I want to hear you talk about women. And I think that's almost separate from the most of music and even pop music in general, where the lyrics aren't as important. And we always talk about there are so many hit songs, like your boy The Weeknd, for example, where the lyrics are not family friendly, but it will be the biggest song on the planet.
That's an understatement.
And I feel like, he's so focused on kind of the content in some of these songs lyrically that I think he's missing out on like the actual like feel and vibe of some songs where he could actually talk about other things and it could still be a trap song.
Yeah.
Because I think songs like So Sorry I Like, but it's like he goes into different modes to tell a story. And he doesn't always tell the story on the same trap type of beat. It's like, okay, we're telling stories now, we're getting deep.
Yeah.
Let's change it up.
Exactly.
And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would want for him to change in his career. That's it for me for lyrics, unless you want to continue. But I want to talk about his career going forward. Yeah, because we got to eulogize this guy.
Yeah, one thing that I want to mention is like he has good flows. I think that's one of his strengths as well. Because you talked about it earlier. Like Lil Baby's one of those rappers I feel like you can rap on any beat. On Listen Up, like I mean, trying to replicate a person's flow without any of the music is kind of hard. But he was like, new crib in another safe, duck off. You getting on my nerves, bitch, fuck off. Runway train, I done took off. I move with a purpose, give him give him the right influence. That's how I'm the big dog. Right? So I think that his flows are cool. I like his flows, fun flows. Fun to rap with, especially, and that's good when it's like that's the first song I'm talking about. Listen up, that's track 1. So if you can get people to like the way that you're rapping from the very first song, I would say that's a good thing.
Yeah, and he has a lot of songs like that. Like, even though his tone is not necessarily clear,
Yeah,
he still has that like rap along thing about him where it's like you want to rap along pretty quickly.
yeah. Same with F you 2 times. The triplet flow is working for him. I would say it's reminiscent of a Future on that track, but it's still working for him. It sounds fun. So I think that's one of his strengths, right? The flows. I do think that it starts to get old with the triplet flow because I think we're now in a time where the triplet flow was like a trend.
Oh, it's what?
But now it's a tool, right? Like people are adding, like flows get added to the toolbox. Nobody just has one flow anymore. We're past that era of hip hop.
Mostly yes.
Hopefully. Like nobody has like, this is, the West Side Gun flow or something like that.
Yes.
Flows have like a name, like instruments now, right? Or yeah, right? So I would say that he kind of overdoes it because I would say F you 2 times he does the triplet flow. I would say Stiff Gang is using the triplet flow. Then there's even So Sorry he uses it a little bit. So it's getting used a lot. It's like if somebody was using the super duper flow 6 times on the album, you'd
notice.
Yeah,
exactly. You'd notice, yeah.
So I think that it's a double-edged sword. One of his biggest issues for me overall is I need an elevation or de-escalation of his tone of voice. Something.
Well, that's where I wanted to kind of end this off with is
Yeah.
I think whatever filter they use on his voice is actually ruining the album because it almost digitizes his voice in a sense and makes it sound electronic. And it's kind of like he can't give that kind of gravitas that like a 21 Savage has. It's like you almost take that option away from him, And I feel like sometimes he needs that filter on his voice to make it sound like a Lil Baby song.
Yeah.
But it's almost every single song where it's like, okay, we get it here. And we mentioned this, off the podcast in 2024, actually, is that he's entering the NBA Youngboy Zone.
Yes.
Now, for those who are new to the podcast, joining us 2025, welcome. Can you explain to them what the NBA Youngboy Zone is?
So the NBA Youngboy Zone originated when we were reviewing NBA Youngboy's music. Past tense. Notice that I said used to. He was getting to this period of Youngboy-ness where he was releasing 3 albums.
It felt like a week. It felt like a week. Yeah.
But that's fine. It can be Gucci Mane. It's fine. But the issue was it was sounding the exact same. There was no sort of variation of what he was doing, how he was sounding, anything like that. So we got to a point where, sure, NBA Youngboy especially at that point in time, sounded huge.
Yep.
Right? Sounded huge. But we're like, there's nothing left to say anymore because it's the same shit. And Lil Baby is now approaching, if not entering, the NBA Youngboy Zone, where we're talking about, it seems like the same thing over and over. The vocals don't change. Lyricism is okay, but it's not mind-bending. The production, we are not saying that the production is stuck in the late 2010s, 2018, 2019.
Yeah,
right? And we're getting to a point now where Lil Baby, I don't feel any sort of evolution in him as an artist where he's trying to do something different. The times that we get teased with the I Promise. We're getting teased with So Sorry, a Stiff Gang, right? Where the production is in a different place and we're like, it's happening.
It's about to go there.
It's happening. We're seeing some sort of change, and then we're getting just a reintroduction to trap production that we've been used to for many years. So it seems as though Lil Baby is entering the NBA Youngboy Zone.
I would say we can't induct him fully today. I really was ready to do that.
Me too.
I had a eulogy written out for him, but I think because he is dropping Dominique next month,
Mhm.
I don't know if we're gonna end up reviewing that project. Maybe it'll be a sound bites, like a little short thing we do. But I think that is his opportunity to not be in that zone. But I think as of now, the past 6 years of his career, definitely been in that zone. The same content, the same sound, the same voice, the same look. And I think the main thing I think about in terms of like what this means for his career is it kind of shows him being stagnant. Now, at this moment, he still has the aura and people love him. Okay, so stagnant at this point is still at a high place. Okay, I gave you all the stats earlier that My Turn did. He's not struggling to feed his family by any means.
I agree.
But I think for an artist of his caliber in terms of popularity, for him to be stagnant is almost a loss. In a sense, because a lot of his fans are disappointed, I think. And I think like disappointing your fans at this point in your career is almost hurts more than disappointing people like us. Because I think people like us who are not really here for him is like, we're indifferent.
Yeah.
Like we'll take the so sorries and I promise, but like we're not feeling any type of way. And to disappoint your fans as on top of that, it's kind of like, so what's the point of it? You impress one of us. Like, if you're going to disappoint your fans and disappoint us, that kind of hurts because the person I'm comparing him to, and this person is obviously is a goat of all goats, and he has a huge fan base, so in the comments, do not flame me for this, but it's kind of like Eminem.
Okay.
And Eminem at this point in his career still is a huge seller. Still, every time he drops an album, it's a big moment. But his fans are mostly impressed with his album still.
Yeah.
The people I know who are Eminem fans, they may not love it the same way as a Marshall Mathers LP, but for the most part, Eminem fans are still like, nope, loved it. You didn't understand. He was giving you the message. You didn't get
don't
it.
see the bars.
Exactly. And I think Lil Baby is this for his career. Wham is actually, he doesn't have any of that. And I think that is where he's really lost it, where his fans can't even come to us like they did with My Turn and say, oh, he's the one, not the two. His fans here are saying, I moved on to Gunna now.
Yeah.
So for his career, for me, this is a big loss.
Yeah, I think so too. I think overall for his career, I think that he is losing to Gunna. I remember when they were coming up at the same time.
Yep.
Basically, it was almost
Together, yeah.
Yeah, it was seeming like they were a duo for a little bit, but then they separated. But I think now in the polls race, he's falling behind very, very quickly.
Oh,
very easily.
By a lot.
Yeah, by a significant margin now. I think that even though not a Gunna fan, I hate to break it to you guys, but I am not a Gunna fan. I'm not a Baby fan. I'm at least able to recognize, okay, Gunna switching it up with the music videos. His vocals are similar, but the production style is different. He can actually make a hit song right now.
Even lyrically,
there's a change up slightly, right? So there's ground that he is losing there, and I just think overall, when you and I are like down on it, and then if you ask the average hip hop fan and they're also down on it, then you're just down.
Yeah. You're just down all around.
You're just down, right? So I think that you're right. If you gotta feed one of two people, you gotta feed us or you gotta feed the streets. Right?
You gotta get somebody.
So if you can't feed any, you're just the table's bare. So I think that's the problem.
Yeah, talking about the cover here. And sorry, we didn't mention this. Wham stands for Who Hard Is Me. We didn't say that at the beginning.
Okay.
But I really feel like he is almost trying to serve his base too much. Mm-hmm. And I think like usually we like the artists to do that. It's like feed people who want to hear it. Like people who want to be fed, feed them. But even this cover is like, this cover at this point in your career for this project, it's like the cover itself I don't hate because the jewelry looks good. You can't really see his face at all. Mm-hmm. Can't really tell it's him. I think calling the album Wham is a whole separate thing that I don't love, but your body, your choice. But this cover to me is another miss in my book because I'm just like, this is a cover that we'll maybe remember for the next month or so. But I'm like, I think 5 years from now, if you show this cover and the name is not on it, like, unless you recognize it being Lil Baby, will you know what cover this is? I don't think so.
Yeah, I think it looks cool, but I'm like that could easily have been Trinidad James. As it could though. It could though.
Gold all on my chain.
Yeah, it could have been Trinidad James. I think it looks cool. I like the cover. I think that the gold pops off of the skin very well. Wham in front of the eyes is interesting as well. So I'm a fan of the cover.
Mhm.
I like the cover. So yeah, that's how I feel about the cover. Do you think it's a no skips?
I don't have to think about this one. This is definitely plenty of skips
Okay.
for me. Like, we have to also think of what's the opposite of no skips.
Mm-hmm.
Because this song probably has like maybe 2 or 3 songs that I'll like actually play. So it's like mostly skips.
Yeah, it's very skippable. I think that it's not a no skips either.
Mhm.
Plenty of tracks that I'm like, I just heard it before by him in the past.
Yeah.
You know, not even other artists, just by him. So
Yeah.
that's also a thing. What else? Do we have anything else?
Vinyl
Is
Cop?
it a vinyl cop?
No. One more thing before we get to our scores. We didn't mention that we reviewed his joint album with Lil Durk.
Did we?
We did review that one, The Voice of the Heroes.
I memory hold that.
I'm not even going to go into that because I know we both didn't give it a good score. I don't even need to go look back.
I want to say again, we do recognize how popular Lil Baby is. I think that's maybe usually when we say like we don't think something is like good, people mistake it for like nobody fucking listens to it. It's like, no, we know people listen to it. We're just like,
Why?
Yeah.
Just say it. Why?
Yeah, well, I don't understand why.
You gave it a 4.
Yeah.
I gave it a 5. One phrase from the description that I think is definitely like so perfect here is aggressive averageness.
Yeah.
And I brought that up because that's actually before his last project, but that was when I felt like it was going downhill.
Okay.
And of course, this was an album that people were listening to a lot that we were not listening to at all.
Yeah.
But I do feel as if he's been average at best for 4 or 5 years now, it feels like, since My Turn. And he's been putting out music the whole time. And it feels like everyone's catching up now. So in reality, we were here first.
Yes.
In 2021, we were telling you guys
It's not very good.
it's not very good. And now in 2025, you guys realize better late than never. Never late is better,
Yeah.
like they say. But I want you to go first because we know you are the biggest Lil Baby hater there is. What's your score for this?
So for Lil Baby's Wham, I'm gonna say it's a 3.5 out of 10, 3.5. It's a 3.5. It's not very good. I just think that there's so much like meat left on the table. Like, what's going on with the voice? How come it never changes? It just never changes. It doesn't like there's no variation in any way, you know? I think that the production, it's just stale now. It's just really, really stale. The songwriting is above average.
Okay.
Okay. The features, shambles. I feel like everybody is being
Agreed.
they're being pulled into a worse version of themselves or reverting to an earlier version of themselves. So I'm just not seeing it. And I haven't seen it for time.
Ever.
Yeah, like it's been a long time since Drip Too Hard. I haven't really seen it. I'm gonna keep it quite honest with you. I haven't really seen it since 2019, and people have been listen to his music. Shout out to him. He's connecting with somebody, but that person is not me. How do you feel about Wham?
I almost don't want to even give this a score because I just don't like this album.
Wow.
I'm not into it. I don't have a reason to go listen to it again. To me, this is a 2.5.
Ooh, wow. You're lower than me on a low score. That's new.
Yeah. Like, I really just don't want to even give it a score, but I just will, just for the sake of the podcast.
Yeah.
But it feels like it doesn't even need to be scored type of deal because I think this is honestly the album that I felt like he was making for a long time. And I felt like this about the last few projects he put out, they all sound like this to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is finally the moment where everyone's catching on. I don't know what took so long personally, but I don't love this project. But listen, Lil Baby fans, get in the comments.
Yeah.
Let us know what is the best song on here. What do you like about this? And before it comes out, tell me, are you excited for Dominique? I have the feeling Dominique is going to be his best project he ever puts out. That just feels like it is to me. He's always been good at those more vulnerable, open songs.
I agree.
So I think this could be his best project. But before it's here, let's talk about it. Are you excited for it? Let me know in the comments. Of course, find us on the interwebs at Album Mode Pod on Twitter, Album Mode Pod on Instagram, and of course, Album Mode Pod on TikTok, Album Mode on YouTube, and leave us a rating and a review. 5 stars, not a single star less. I want more reviews this year in 2025. That's what resolution I have. Please, we want more reviews. That's how we get up the rankings. That helps the podcast. So if you're a fan, you're watching on YouTube, go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us that rating and that review. And until next time, know yourself, know your worth.
Later days.